Hello and welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I'll tear your soul apart.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Hellraiser, which came out in 1987 from writer, director Clive Barker. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis for Hellraiser?
Well, the film follows the Cotton family, primarily Larry and Frank, a pair of brothers. Larry and his wife have just moved back to Larry's old family home and has found out that Frank is living in the attic. Frank actually has just escaped from a hell dimension that is controlled by the Cenobites, who have just spent a small amount of time tearing Frank limb from limb. Frank manages to convince Julia, Larry's wife, to lure men back to the house so that Frank can suck the life force or their blood from them and regenerate. But Larry's daughter Kirstie finds out about this insidious plot and sets out to stop them before something bad happens to her father.
Clive Barker is pretty much synonymous within the horror genre right now. I think even Stephen King heralded Clive Barker as the new or the next generation in horror.
Right.
Clive Barker originally was an author of several books, and movie studios, fishing for the next sort of, the next great thing in horror movie making, looked at his novellas and his books and made a couple of adaptations. And they're pretty damn terrible. Clive Barker was actually outraged, I think, that they only used about 7 lines of dialogue, I think, from his original book, translated into the film.
Yeah.
And so with his short story within the novella, The Hellbound Heart, he decided that he was going to take directorial control, and he pretty much assembled a team pretty easily, considering he already had a stage production company which were filled with actors already working on stage plays that he had already devised.
Right.
This is also a very British production, which a lot of people don't seem to realise. Well, yes, it was entirely financed by an American film company, but the entire production took place in London, England. However, the studio, who had very little input and creative control over the film, they kind of turned up at one point while they were filming and went, "Oh, so you're not all filming in a staircase? Okay, we'll let you be." But then, once the filming was finished, the producers went, "This could be a great, great film. Friday the 13th Part 6 has just come out.
Yeah.
A Nightmare on Elm Street 3's just come out, and this studio's like, I think we're onto something here. It's a shame that it's very English. I know what we'll do. We'll redub half the cast to American, and then we can definitely produce the film and sell it to a wider audience."
That your daughter?
Uh-huh.
Got her mother's looks.
Her mother's dead.
Oh.
Well, I've always got like a Hammer horror aspect from this movie.
Most definitely, the creators and the crew behind the film were massively influenced by Hammer horror.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at the time, 87, horror was taking a bit of decline.
In British cinema, definitely.
Well, I mean, you were starting to decline a lot around the world as well. Like you said, Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 had just come out, and that was going to start to die. 4, 5, 6, 7, whatever. Friday the 13th had already reached its peak, so you needed something new to come out. And this is where Hellraiser would, dare I say it, open the doorway to something new, because you have that opening sequence where you've got the box just on the table, and we aren't told who it is, but we've got Frank sat there in some, Eastern Arabian town, in a bar. He's going to buy the box from this mysterious little old man for God knows how much money he's chucking on the table. And then we cut to Frank in the attic. It's surrounded by candles, holding this box. And you just look at that scene and you're just like, yeah, this is not going to end well. When you're sat in the dark with candles lit, playing with this box with your shirt off, you're not hoping puppies are going to come flying out of it. But I love the way that he starts to mess around with it. I think it's the Lament configuration box.
Yes.
And obviously the history of this box would be told to us in later films. I love the fact that the budget is so low on this film that all you have to do is just shine some lights through some decrepit old walls and you start to get those shivers.
Oh, just the effect of the Cenobites arriving when it's the musical score kicking in, that simple effect of just the blue lights coming through the cracks in the walls, and the rattling of chains. It's just subliminally precision in terms of evoking that kind of terror and fear and wild imagination as to what the hell is going on, until the visceral horror of watching these chains hook flesh. And it was, at the time this came out, it was pretty shocking, pretty brutal, and it's still very memorable.
It is still very shocking. I mean, even though you can kind of sit there and notice that it's not real flesh, that the hook is going in, your imagination does the rest. And when it starts to pull it, you feel it, and you see the shock on Frank's face.
He was definitely not expecting that.
I thought I'd gone to the limits. I hadn't. The Cenobites gave me an experience beyond the limits. Pain and pleasure, indivisible.
He was essentially hoping for eternal ecstasy, eternal sexual bliss. And he actually believed in the book that the Cenobites were all going to be these nubile women that were all going to please him forever. Yet he didn't quite understand that the Cenobites kind of, yes, they will, but, with an equal dose of pain.
Yes. for themselves. That's the beauty of this film. I get it from the film that he like I said, he knew about the box. Nobody finds the box unless they're actually looking for it, and they're only looking for it because they want to experience what this. Well, a lot of people believe it's hell. The first thing you immediately think about when you see the chains and the blood and the flesh is hell. I mean, I always harken back to Doom. The Doom universe with, body parts displayed all over the walls. But they don't actually say that in the entire movie. The Cenobites actually say about how they're explorers from another dimension.
Yeah, but, Kirstie several times tells them to go to hell.
Yeah.
And the female Cenobite is almost about to say something about how they can't go there when Pinhead immediately cuts her off.
We can't. Not alone. You solved the box. We came. Now you must come with us. Taste our pleasures.
Was she about to say something, reveal a bit of information about the lore, and Pinhead's just like, nope.
But that's it.
We don't go there.
That's it. In every generation, you have that really horrible place. In every society or civilization, probably all over the universe, you've got that place you never really want to go.
Well, for me, it is incredibly Lovecraftian in its design and nature, where you have, potentially these guardians of this nether realm. You have the gateway and you have the keepers, and it exists almost parallel to our world, but sort of untangible, but there, calling to those twisted souls, basically, that yearn to explore those realms.
Why you would want to anyway. I mean, that little part where you've got Pinhead, Doug Bradley, in all of his get-up, and he's just piecing together what looks to be Frank's face.
It's just
and you're just completely thrown, all the blood, the gore. You're what, 10 minutes into the film?
Right at the beginning, you're establishing all of this,
But then it cuts, and I love the way that it cuts. The fact that it cuts to the outside of the house. You go through the house. You've got all the moulding food, the way that Frank's been living, and Pinhead seals the box, and their little chain room disappears, and Julia and Larry turn up, and even though I've watched the film many times, I'm still very foggy onto what the connection is between the house and Larry and Frank. Is it their mum? Is it Larry's mum and dad's house, or is it his old house that he used to live with?
He says it was his mother's house, and he tried to sell it beforehand, but his brother refused to sell the house.
Right.
Needed somewhere as a sort of somewhere to lay low when he's gone and committed crimes potentially.
How long since you were here?
Oh, the better part of 10 years. I wanted to sell it after the old lady died. I couldn't get Frank to agree. I guess he needed a hideout or something.
Yeah. Well, that's it. There's a little bit of history there, though, isn't it? Where it turns out that Frank turned up at their old house and met Julia after Julia and Larry had got married, and had just kind of swooned his way into the fucking house and straight between Julia's legs.
Well, this is the villains of the movie.
Yeah.
Now, everybody still remembers, thanks to the advertising and the promotion for the film, Pinhead being the central iconic figurehead for the Hellraiser and the Hellraiser series of films.
Yes.
And this is the crux of this horror movie, is that it is layered with having this domestic drama, essentially, with the layers of the Cenobites and hell, sort of using that to explore this domestic sort of turmoil that's about to ensue. Which is why from the book they changed Kirstie from being Larry's friend, who fancies him, to being Larry's daughter.
Yes.
And so that adds to the extra drama of the family element there. You know, you look at this from the outside and you just go, this marriage is going to fail.
Yes.
And just looking at it, you can tell that Larry is a very good man. However, he cannot sexually excite his wife at all. So much so that when Frank has turned up, she's enraptured with him. And so she is hungry to keep feeding her desire for it.
Yeah.
And of course, Frank disappears out of her life. And so she is then, as while she's exploring Frank's old house, she finds this photo box. And she gets envious and jealous, seeing all these other women that Frank's been with. And she tears up one of the pictures and keeps the one of Frank. And I really love this setup where she's fantasizing and remembering these sexual encounters with Frank, right up to the point of orgasm, which is when Larry gashes his hand on the nail, which starts the whole film.
The thing is, with the actress playing Julia, she just looks evil from the start. She's just got this look about her of the evil stepmother, you know, and you can just tell that Larry is trying desperately to hold on to this marriage, and yet I every time I watch this film, I'm just like, just let her fucking go. She's a bitch. She cheated on you with your brother, sorry. You know, so you should have just dumped their ass. Your daughter is trying her best to like the stepmother, but there's nothing to like. She doesn't like you, Larry. You know, she only cares about herself. She is a selfish bitch, and that's the evil. That's the thing that that's the thing that I get connecting her with Frank and everything that will come from the Cenobites, is there's just evil inside her, you know, and like you said, she's feeding it by remembering all the different sexual positions her and Frank went through, and I'm like, yes, but he's fucking dead now, or no, he's missing at the moment, and it does build up, like I said, to my one of my favorite scenes and the best special effects you could probably get in the 80s is the rebirth of Frank.
Wow. You know, they shot a lot of this stuff in reverse.
Yes.
But it is non-CGI. It is all prosthetic effects. It's KY jelly and packets of condoms and just... and they kind of melt what they've got there to give the effect. And it is just brilliant. And I want to talk about Christopher Young, who is the music's composer for the film.
Yeah.
Who just does a fantastic job. It's kind of like a waltz kind of music beat, you know, that just brings this creature to life and just elevates it beyond just this practical effect to something wonderful and magical and revolting and horrible to look at, yet fascinating. You can't take your eyes off it. You know, that's it. That's one of the most iconic sequences in the film.
Yes. I mean, the arms sprouting out from the ground, the brain reassembling, the skull latching back on, you know, and then he gets that weird unearthly birth type child cry, like it's being reborn, or like he's restructured his soul, and all this from his brother's blood. Obviously, the later series, it wouldn't matter if it was his brother or not. That room was kind of a weird dimensional gateway to the Cenobites' place. Anybody who had bled in there, the blood would have fed Frank's soul, and he would have pieced himself together. But now he's back, and you're like, holy shit, okay, now we're worried because he's living in the attic. Julia's come across this decrepit corpse crawling along the floor. And as much as I love this film, I'm a big fan of the second one, but this one shows 80s acting, or overacting, shall we say, from Julia. She doesn't react kind of exactly how I would think somebody should react when they see a rotting, half pieced together corpse dragging itself across the floor, talking to her, Julia, it's me, Frank. I'd be like, fucking die. Oh, sorry, Frank. I didn't realize that was your, skinless body on the floor.
Yeah, but like I said, this is a fantasy story.
Yeah,
and I think that Clare Higgins, who is not a big fan of the horror genre at all, and in an interview she said she's never even seen the film the whole way through. So she's not adept at playing these villainous, psychotic characters, but she is a very good actress. And I think she sells the reaction well enough that when she finds out, she goes from being horrified and frightened of this thing to yes, I'm going to go and kill men for you.
To inquisitive. She wants to know how he got like that and how he's come back.
And for me, she does all of those changes within a relative short amount of time. Like, she has to go through a range of emotions to get to the point where she's going to be like, okay, I'm going to go out and bring men back to feed you. And it's one hell of a shift that she has to convey. And I think she does it pretty adequately.
And this is obviously, at the same time, you get the balance with Kirstie as well. Kirstie's got this whole boyfriend character thing going on. I don't appreciate him in this movie because obviously he wouldn't be a character in the later films with Kirstie. So it's kind of like Kirstie, the daughter, is the virginal heroine.
For me, she is.
She's a brilliant actress.
She's a good enough actress, but I think she is the weakest part in this film, and I think this was her acting debut.
Yeah,
and it does kind of show compared to some of the other actors. She did seem a little bit weak.
She does well. I mean, she's a little bit. I feel she's a little bit weak, especially with the sequences with her boyfriend. Some of the stronger sequences with Kirstie is when she's on her own, like a lot of the sequences with the vagrant. She's working in a pet store. She's trying to balance some woman who wants to talk to the manager. The manager's not there, and she's noticed this homeless man once before, and now he's come out again into the pet store. She follows him to the back of the pet store, and he's eating the grasshoppers. It's a creepy scene, which harkens that this movie is quite a good success without the blood, the guts, the chains, and this weird sexual content. You can have just a guy who looks homeless eating grasshoppers, and it freaks you out.
Oh my God. Get out. You get out of here.
On top of that, she's having those weird dream sequences too.
Well, the homeless man, or the vagrant, however he's referred to, he's never really explained, and he doesn't really appear and his story's not really explained in any of the further sequels.
No.
And so it's kind of weird that he just sort of starts stalking Kirstie for apparently no reason. So I have my own theory that the homeless man is a guardian of the lament configuration, the box.
Yes.
And in the book's ending, Kirstie is tasked with becoming the next guardian.
Right.
The engineer pretty much tells her, "You're now the guardian of the box. Give it to whoever think should have it.
Yeah.
But then take the box back from them. This is kind of what he does. Like, sells the box, the person opens the box, they get killed, taken away, they come and take the box back and wait for the next person.
Yeah.
You don't really know how many boxes there are, because that made me think, well, if Pinhead and the Cenobites are, they only get brought into our existence, into our world, through this one box.
Yeah.
Day to day, it's going to be pretty slow. unless these boxes are being opened around the world.
Well, this is something hearkened to by Pinhead at one point. Kirstie has got her hand onto the box and she has opened it herself.
Well, that's before you go into her, is that Frank seems to be taking an awful long time to figure out the actual puzzle box, whereas Kirstie manages to solve it almost instantly. And to me, that just made me go, yeah, okay, she is meant to be a box guardian, which is why she was able to open it so quickly, in theory.
Yeah, but this is it. She gets hold of it and she opens up the doorway and the Cenobites come.
Well, no, that's the thing, is the Cenobites don't come. She opens up the doorway and the door just opens up to their universe, and it's like the Cenobites weren't called to her.
No. Yeah, she solved the box a different way at first and has opened a doorway to their dimension, is chased back out, and then they turn up because the box has called to them. But when she happens to mention Frank to the Cenobites, to me, I get the feeling that not only do they have so many boxes, so many doorways, and so many victims or people that they've procured over time, they can't keep track. So when she says, Frank's missing.
He escaped you!
Nobody escapes us.
He did! I've seen him!
Impossible.
He's alive!
Supposing he had escaped us, what has that to do with you?
There's a bit of Pinhead that's like, oh, fuck off. Nobody can escape from him. Nobody's ever escaped from us. And she's like, I've seen him. And he's like, okay, well, I want to hear it. I want to hear it so I know it's actually him. And it disappears. And it's like the box isn't actually closed. Kirstie has opened the box and the Cenobites just literally fucking turn up at any point then. They can just, and there's that point in the attic where she goes in, finds that mutilated corpse, and the Cenobites, they just appear like, who did this? Who the fuck did this?
Want the man who did this.
But you're obviously also trying to balance all of this with the fact that 80s style horror, Julia is going out dressed in fucking shoulder pads and
that's
huge
the thing,
makeup.
this film could and almost is timeless. Like, it could have taken place at any time. But but it's Julia's outfits that really set the time of the late 80s for this film.
It's all of their outfits, all of their puffy shirts.
The great thing is that there's very few actors in the film. There's only a few times when she actually has to go outside, and it's when she goes to the bars that you get to see the fashion and the locations.
The big glasses.
And then that's what really cements the film as being a film from the late 80s.
Yeah.
Which, it is a little bit of a shame, but at the same time, it really doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter for me because it reminds me of the late 80s. I watch Hellraiser and I'm just like, oh God, what else came out that year? You got Bad Taste that came out that same year, and you get the same thing from Bad Taste by the way they're all designed. But yeah, she lures men back, and the first one is kind of like, you can fully tell she's never done anything like that before, because she makes a complete mess of it. There gets blood all over the place. She's a bit freaked out by it, and then obviously Frank takes over and sucks the life force from them. But then as the killings go on, she just makes it so much easier that she doesn't even try. She just lures them in and then wallop. I love that sequence where, skinless Frank, he starts off as the kind of this rotten corpse that can't move. Then he's able to stand. You can see the muscle getting onto the skin. And then as it gets further and further, it's just literally like flesh on the outside, and he has no skin.
I love the fact that he says that his nerve endings are starting to reattach themselves, and he's starting to feel pain. And it's just, all of the layers that he goes through of the transformation is just, it almost looks animatronically correct.
Yes.
And that's what's viscerally frightening, just looking at him. And, at this point in time, you usually, if you've got a, skinless person, it'd be like a boo, jump scare, don't see him again.
No.
Whereas we have this guy in the suit sort of walking around, talking, smoking, and it's just like, wow, the effect is so good, you almost can't take your eyes off it. Now, the film's not perfect, and the special effects are amazing. They were groundbreaking.
Yeah.
But what's with his ribcage being all over the place?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're talking prosthetic suit. I don't even think it's the same actor playing Frank at the beginning.
It's not.
Frank.
Well, there's 3 people playing Frank. There's the Frank that's in the flesh.
Yes.
The Frank the monster.
Yeah.
And then there's also the voiceover for Frank. So it took, all those different people to bring this character to life.
Why didn't they just keep the same guy's voice?
Well, the guy who did the voice for Frank even said that he was like, you know what, I don't feel like his voice worked for the part.
Okay.
And so he wasn't too fussed about him being voiced over.
Yeah.
He thought that actually cemented the character. But why they recast a different actor for the bodysuit was they cast someone who was really quite small of frame.
Yeah,
so
that would work.
When they put the the muscle and everything else
Yeah.
on, he would actually look
Padded
proportional
out. Yeah,
in a
he'd pad
normal
out.
size.
Yes.
Which again helps sell the effect. The makeup work on the Cenobites.
Oh.
My God, it just brought S&M to movies.
Yeah.
And to a cinema-going audience that might never have known what this underground culture was.
Without the Cenobites, you'd have no Dark Elder in 40K with the chains and the blades and the you've got the nipple piercings here and the flesh stripped away there. And I mean, just a fucking... I hate to keep jumping onto it, but just Pinhead himself. Somebody sat there and went, right, we want a mask and 50 nails pushed into this guy's head all around. It's
so why isn't he called Nailhead? Well, it turns out that in the original design, they were pins.
Right.
And then when they took photos of him and did some screen tests, they were just like,
they're too
it's
small.
not quite working. So they replaced all the pins with nails. However, the nickname of Pinhead kind of stuck. Now, interestingly enough, in the film, they never call him Pinhead. In the credits, he's called Lead Cenobite.
Yeah.
And it was really, he had the nickname on set of Pinhead. And, it was really the fans that embraced him, with him being the cover boy for the movie, deciding he was called Pinhead.
Well,
and the other Cenobites as well, they never really had names.
No.
They were just nicknames. I think Butterball did actually have the name in the book.
Yeah, he's the fat one with the sunglasses.
Who was in the book the lead Cenobite. And he was originally meant to be the lead Cenobite in the film. However, when they got him in the costume, with the stitched out eyes, that was how you could tell he was the lead Cenobite from the book. And the actor inside couldn't talk. So they decided that they're going to give... And again, the Chatterer also had lines of dialogue, but they took all the lines away and they gave it to the female Cenobite and to Pinhead, essentially. And that's what also helped cement him as being the lead Cenobite, because he's now got all this dialogue to convey. And interestingly, Doug Bradley almost didn't even take the part of Pinhead.
Right.
He was originally supposed to be the guy that's helped moving the mattress in at the very beginning of the film.
Yeah.
And so it was like, if you're an actor, you want to be in film, you want them to be able to see your face. And so it was like, okay, I'll take the role of Pinhead. And little did Doug Bradley know that he was going to be the cover boy for the film. And then little did he know he was going to reappear in 8 sequels after this, which is kind of, it's kind of amazing that, they set out to make Julie and Frank the villains. Yeah, Pinhead is the one that overshadows.
That's the one. That's the one you remember. It's kind of like the Friday the 13th thing, isn't it? Friday the 13th Part 1. Everyone goes, "Oh, it's Jason," but it's actually not. It's Jason's mother, kind of thing.
Well, there's another thing is that Clive Barker to this day still fucking hates the name Pinhead. for the character that is being created. He said that it's undignified to call someone of that stature Pinhead.
We'll tear your soul apart.
And Clive Barker's even gone on record as saying that in a future iteration of either his comic book continuation of Hellraiser, or if he does ever finally get around to making Hellraiser 10 or a Hellraiser reboot, he's promised that that Pinhead's real name, his real Cenobite name, would be unveiled, and is until then only ever referred to Pinhead as the priest. And even in the comic book form, he is referred to as the priest, which does make much more sense. However, we're still going to call him Pinhead.
It's
stuck.
I think it's a human thing. You would, out of fear, you would name this creature or this being something just to make yourself feel more comfortable with it. Yeah, lead Cenobite, female Cenobite, second and third Cenobite. They work. But when you see this creation on screen, you see all those nails, the way he's talking to you, you need something. You're just like, I'm going to call him fucking John. No, it doesn't work. I'll call him Pinhead. Yeah, okay, that'll work. And at least then you've got a name for the figures and the games and the franchise and all that.
And for merchandise.
Merchandise. That's the main reason you do it.
One of the best features about this film is that we get introduced to all of this lore and mythology, and we're never given all of the answers. All we're given is these questions are, who are these Cenobites? Were they even human? Where did they come from? What else are they doing? We're only just given these brief moments of explanation. And it just brings up all of these questions, and which would be explored in the sequels.
Yes, but it works very well. I suppose it's why Clive Barker, dare I say it, Clive Barker works better than Stephen King when his books are changed into films, because his books, they get a few twinges here and there so that they flow well, and like you said, you get all this lore like you would in a book, but your imagination does the rest. You've got questions now, you've got to seek out the answers. In a film wise, you've got to wait until the sequel comes out, and if the sequel comes out at the same time the second book comes out and they don't quite match up, you're going to accept one over the other. At least in this one, you've got the Hellraiser stuff from the mini short story, and then there's no more. I don't think there are any more sequels for the books. It's just the films, then the comic books, then a little bit of short stories here and there that people have made up themselves. But we're digressing, we've got to get back to the film. Kirstie is starting to realise that Frank is this fleshless corpse up in the attic. Julia is helping him kill men so that he can suck the life force from them. There are bodies being hidden in the attic. She's afraid her dad is next, and that's the beauty of this film, is that he is. Frank needs skin. He needs a fucking skin to walk around in. So what are they going to do? They murder Larry. They murder Larry and they skin him so that Frank can walk around in it. But this is where the film, for me, starts to show the fact that it is just an 80s horror movie. There's nothing groundbreaking about it apart from the fact that Kirstie rushes back to the house to seek her, to find out what's happened to her dad, and she comes across what she thinks is her dad, and there's a bloodline running right across his scalp, but right by his hairline, all the way down by his ears, down to the back of his neck. A blatant bloodline, like nobody should ever have something like that running across, but she doesn't question it.
Yeah, it does show her to be a quite stupid character at this moment. The thing is, we as an audience are privy to what's going on, and she is at this really heightened emotional sort of experience, and she's just so glad to physically see her dad there that she's not even going to question the weirdness that's going on, because she's had a run-in with Cenobites and this weird demon creature. She's just so glad to see her dad, and she refuses to believe that it could possibly be Frank, even when Pinhead shows her this corpse and it's like, who did this? And she's like, no, you can't take my dad away. She's the only one who hasn't figured it out yet, and so as an audience it does make her look stupid, but I put it down to the fact that she is in some pretty seriously deep shit here.
Yeah, she is. And there's this whole, now we are back, back inside the house. That's the beauty of this film, is that it is all just encased inside this house. All of the murders, all of the deaths, all of the scary sequences, apart from obviously Kirstie's little thing in the hospital, It's mostly all contained in this house. And now we get the final kind of chase sequence. Julia is killed by Frank while trying to hold Kirstie. Frank is so deranged. Even though he says he loves Julia, he doesn't really. And he gets off sucking the life off of people. I think it would have to be a continuous thing for Frank. You know, he's not really alive. This is how he feeds himself now, is feeding off a life force. He stabs Julia, feeds off of her life force, but doesn't kill her.
No.
And so she goes and figures out the box. Because later on you'll find, Kirstie will come down into the bedroom and Julia's on the bed and there are chains from the box. She has sealed, or she has figured out part of the box and it's killed her. And so that's where she has died, on that mattress. Frank chases Kirstie around. It's like what, 5 rooms in this fucking house? He chases her all the way up the stairs. She hides in a room, makes a load of noise. He goes in the room and then goes, nah, she can't be in here. It's literally you and Kirstie in the house. She comes out of that room, doesn't she? She comes out of the room and she cries at the top of the stairs, quite loudly. So
I put that down to her, to actually luring Frank out and to trap him.
Yeah, it did seem that. Yeah, that's it. Her, like you said, debut acting.
Because she knew the Cenobites were in there,
and so she lures them back. He lures him back into the room.
Yeah,
hears him confess that that's not really, Frank. It's actually her dad, and he's actually Frank. And with that, like I said, that's what makes me think the box is always open to Kirstie, because the Cenobites don't even have to
physically be there to listen in.
Yeah, they just appear, like boom, music, lights come down again, the iconic lights from the beginning of the film. The chains come flying out. And in one of horror cinema's most iconic endings, we get Frank covered in chains. The whole Jesus wept line.
That line, that effect,
sticks
that
with me.
setup, that tearing of flesh and body exploding is just brilliant. And originally, Clive Barker's script, the line was, "Fuck you." And it was Andrew Robinson, who I think is a fantastic actor, going all the way back to Dirty Harry, all the way up to, being one of my favourite Star Trek characters of all time on Deep Space Nine, playing Garrick the Tailor. Andrew Robinson goes from being this nice, everyday, caring, loving family father figure into this deranged, psychotic killer. And it's the same actor, and he makes this brilliant transformation playing Frank. And he was the one at the end who just went, "Hey, Clive Barker, I know this is your baby, but how about I say,
Jesus wept."
It's the icing on this horror cake. It really is.
Yeah. I've got bunches of favourite scenes. I mean, my first one is Frank's resurrection. Just the effects for it, the way it plays out, the music, just the gooiness, the KY jelly, all of that. Everything that you ever want from a horror sequence is in this quick sequence. And the way it just ends, with him doing that weird cry. He's got no legs. He's still kind of pulling himself out. Absolutely fucking awesome. Skinless Frank and Julia, their whole dialogues together, the makeup on him in every single sequence he's in, the fact that the development of Julia's character leading back all these men. I especially like the fact, I think it's the first time she kills one of the guys and Larry comes home and he can hear Julia moving around and is calling to her, and she's kind of like Benny Hill running from one room to another carrying a dead body, and then stealthily moving down the stairs as he comes past so that she can get into the bathroom. And then she's like, "Oh, just go down and put some music and give me a drink, I'm fine." Wash the blood off, wash the blood off herself.
I like how later when she makes other kills, she doesn't get so messy.
No, that's it. It's just like, just one hit and then she just kind of cleans her hands. Favourite scene number 3. I couldn't help but laugh at this sequence, and it's where Julia and Larry are watching boxing, and Larry notices that Julia is not bothered by it. Usually she kind of hates this kind of stuff, and he hears a noise because Frank is pacing back and forth upstairs. He's getting hungry. And they check the attic. Nothing's there apart from a bunch of nailed rats to a wall.
I love the fact that the filmmakers got called into the studio
Yeah.
and they were like, you can't nail rats to the walls and to the ceilings. And they were like, they're fake rats.
They're fake rats.
Look, they're animatronic. You know, this was groundbreaking at the time. And the studios were like, oh, right,
God,
okay,
we're
we can put
worried.
the no animals were harmed sticker on the end of the film.
It then gets to the sequence where they're in bed and Larry is trying to, get Julia sexually active. And fucking Frank comes out the cupboard, stands at the end of the bed during a lightning storm, and kind of just knifes this rat and flops the flesh out like he's getting off on it. Like he's getting off of the flesh.
Well, he's come out to kill Larry. End
Yeah,
of.
yeah.
And Julia's just constantly, she's trying to signal to him, no, don't do it.
No, that's...
Because she's still conflicted, it's the last vestiges of her humanity.
Yeah.
Before she's just like, kill him.
Just kill him off. But it's the way Larry at the end.
I don't know what the symbology is in him killing the rat.
Like I said, I think it's just Frank getting off. It's like he's seen so much stuff in the hell dimension that he's getting off on this, but she doesn't want him to or whatever. But it's the way that Julia pushes Larry off. Frank disappears back into the closet, and Larry's like, "I just don't get you. One minute you're wanting me to, the next minute you're not. Wow, And then he just wanders off.
I find it amazing how he can't smell all these corpses in the house.
Yeah,
this house must really reek.
And my final favorite sequence is trapping Frank. It's the way that Frank, when he sees the lights, his line is, "What the hell is that?" It's like,
wait a minute, you opened this thing beforehand. You've seen this happen before.
You know that, but it's the way hell is that, Oh,
Yeah.
hell is that coming to get me? The chains flying out, Jesus, wet blind, and then the final explosion. The final chase sequence is okay. The whole house collapsing down. It does get a bit silly because, Kirstie seals the box and starts sending the Cenobites back. But you get a cool sequence with Pinhead. You get a cool sequence with the girl pulling her claw up the wall. But then you get the Chatterer hiding underneath a sheet. Blatantly, it's like he's like, she can't see me. I'm invisible. No, she can fucking see you. You're just wearing a fucking see-through sheet. The way he goes back. And then you got Butterball with the building falling on top of him. And then that weird unicycle monster at the door.
The engineer.
Yeah, which... The special effects don't work now for that creature.
No.
The effects work for pretty much everything else, but I always remember that monster never worked before.
It always reminds me of the creature that turns up at the end of Evil Dead 2.
For me, it's the creature at the end of In the Mouth of Madness.
Yeah.
With the flashing lights. They use the same camera angles, they use the same lighting, they kind of use the same corridor sequence over and over again, and
it's a shame you can see the trolley behind it.
The
crew, the sort of train that it's on.
It is a shame, but at the same time, for me, as bad as it is, I kind of sit there going, it's real.
It's actually there.
It's actually there. So I kind of like it as an old school film fan.
When Kirstie's wrestling for the box against it, and the hands are just sort of flapping, it's like, why doesn't it just grab it and go? It could do, but it sort of for me, it sort of seems stuck in the hell world, and it can't quite come into the real world.
Yes, the house
to
is
take it
in and out. Yeah.
What I also like as a bit of extra trivia for you is that if you look at the lament configuration of the box, when it's turned to a specific setting, all of the weird sort of insignias and designs on the box actually shapes out the engineer. I have a fair few scenes in the film. I think this film is absolutely iconic. It's interestingly that this was the third Hellraiser movie that I ever saw. I saw them in a bizarre sequence. I saw 2, 3, then 1.
Oh god!
And so at this point, I already knew who Pinhead was.
Yeah.
And the first time I ever saw Hellraiser, I honestly thought it was a little bit boring and a little bit padded.
Yes.
But now that I'm older and rewatching it, this for me is the most coherent Hellraiser movie in the entire franchise. I think that Clive Barker is, nigh on genius when it came to making this film. The way that he had his insight, his control over the crew, the script, the actors, and I think it all just gelled together so well. The special effects from image animation are just sublime. just fantastic. And you can see why they would be employed to work on Hellbound and all the way up to films like Event Horizon and so on. Their practical effects work is just brilliant. I guess my other favourite scenes are really involves Kirstie when she has that nightmare sequence.
Oh, that's a freaking sequence.
All these feathers just just
the
falling out of the
crying.
sky. The child crying, the table, the sheets, the blood.
Yes.
And when she does go to hell, just the imagery, we don't get to see very much of it, but it just it just creates all this wonder, like what the hell is going on in there? What's going on in there? You hear these sound effects and it's just like there's a whole world in there I want to explore.
Yeah.
And so those scenes really stick with me because I want to know more. Of course, Doug Bradley, for me, even though he's only in like 8 minutes of the film, really does steal the show with his fantastic delivery, awesome makeup effects. That really, really works for me.
Yes.
I categorically recommend Hellraiser. It is a benchmark in the horror genre. It works. The music, the locations, the lighting, the cinematography, the actors, it just all gels together so well.
The first Hellraiser movie, if you've never seen any of the Hellraiser movies, start with this one. No pun intended, but it will open a doorway to a universe that you probably never even thought could ever exist. Like we said, the special effects work in some aspects, and then they don't work in some certain aspects. I'm always under the attitude of less is more when it comes to horror movies, and the sequences with Skinless Frank and the Cenobites, they're only small sequences, but they leave more impact on you than the giant, huge, unicycle, weird monster thing chasing Kirstie down the corridor. That to me is not. It's too much. You should have just left it with the dark corridors and done a scream, and then I would have been out of there fucking 3 seconds later. Get on to Hellraiser because, does it lead to one of the greatest fucking horror sequels of all time? Yes, it does.
We have no more surprises.
We've always been here.
But please, feel free. Explore. We have eternity to know your flesh.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.
We'll tear your soul apart.